My name is Gary Malkin, and I am the founder of an endeavor called Wisdom of the World Wellness. And what I would like people to know about me is that for my whole life, I've been using the lens of the universal language of human emotion, music, to see everything through an understanding that when we feel fully, and music can help us experience our full range of human emotions, we embody and embrace and live with the best version of our humanity. And that's what I would love you to know about me. I think also just personally, I've always been, as a result of my engagement with music, a heart-centered man that understood the power of music as a way to unify us and unify ourselves internally as well, and bring us into the present moment and the magic of the present moment. So I am somebody driven by connection with magic, with mystery, with other people, and with the best of what human beings have to offer. And I'll stand behind that. Yeah, that's who I am. And that's what I want you to know right now. In the years that I have devoted myself to music, originally it was for scoring film and TV and commercials. It was always, even as a child, the source of wisdom came from watching what happened when we bring music into the field. It's like you add water and stir, add music and feel, right? Even as a child, what I noticed was that that the air seemed to change when you infused it with music in a way that was designed to open your heart, right? So for me, I think that it primed me for a unique relationship to what they now call the field, the unified field, the all that is, right? Um, so I derive my wisdom from what we now call coherence, this sense of homeostasis, of this self-regulated place of heart coherence that we know when we're there. And what I've noticed is when I align myself with those energies and listen carefully and remember that I'm a portal, not just an identity and an ego and a person with history and wounds and shadows. When I listen, I can feel the resonance of the wisdom start to birth inside of my gut, inside my heart, and then my throat. And I have this sense of what the wisdom is before it clothes itself in words, if you know what I mean. So um, so that's one of the places that I want to say is the most important source of wisdom for me now. However, honestly, the greatest cultivator of my wisdom, if you would call it wisdom, is having endured the amount of losses, having endured the amount of suffering, the loss of my sister 12 years ago, an untimely death from brain cancer, the loss of my father when I was on, 31 years ago, so young, when he was only 72. The losses and the dashed hopes and dreams and I used to be somebody that had real strong expectations of things going in a certain way towards, I used to jokingly call myself a harmony Nazi, because I was always wanting things harmonious, and you will be harmonious no matter what. So I used to have expectations as a result of those harmony requirements. And then I would end up getting what I call an expectation hangover when we end up experiencing that we're not in control and we can't determine what unfolds. And invariably, when you live long enough to recognize that, and to recognize the surrender necessary to accept life on its own terms, That's a big source of the wisdom that I hope I have. I think that what I want to say also, though, is the more wisdom I seem to have, the more I know I don't know, right? So whatever wisdom, I don't think of myself as a wisdom keeper, although many people say I am. I think of myself as a cultivator of other wisdom keepers, and we'll talk more about that later. But my source of wisdom has mostly to do with how no matter what happened, I seem to have the resilience to fall down and get up without losing my heart and my spirit and my love of life. And for whatever reason, that was just graced to me as the soul that I am. But that's a lot of what has given me my wisdom, is my tenacity, my resilience, and the losses that I've sustained has taught me an enormous amount of respect and surrender for the fact that we're here on a very short stay, and we're lucky enough to have close friends and experiences, but we have no control about how it unfolds. And a lot of my wisdom comes from understanding the impermanence of life. What comes to my heart is a memory. When I was 21 years old, it was 1974, I was very close to this 4-year-old girl who was beloved to me. I was part of her coming of term in the womb when I was only 18, 19 years old. So I was very in love with this little child. And through a weird stroke of horrendous circumstances, when we were jump starting a car, me and the father inadvertently pushed the car, not knowing she was underneath it, and we pushed it on her. And it was a horrendous experience. And when I saw this beautiful child without her soul in her body, without where it was just an inanimate body, it was my first experience of the aha, that we are light that inhabits this body, but it's by no means forever, right? And it really was a transformational moment for me when I went, well, if that light could never be extinguished, then where does it go? Where does it go? And many, many years later, when I had a very serious accident in 1998, I was recounting that experience of a direct understanding of my fragility. Like people, in the Bhagavad Gita, they say, what is the most remarkable thing in all of the world? And the most remarkable thing, paraphrased in the ancient 5,000-year-old Hindu text, is the most remarkable thing in all the world is that each of us will die, but none of us ever thinks it will happen to them. And I was recounting that experience and all the experiences I've had of loss. And I realized that we walk around like really numb to the direct understanding of the fact that we will disappear one day, really numb to the purely cognitive understanding that we're born and then we die. We all know it, right? We all think we know it. But what I realized was, until you are hit with a serious near death or death experience around you, you realize that the ways in which we're processing information that has become normal in this culture has been highly overcognitive and linear and rational. So like I said, we all know we're going to die, but to actually know it in your bones, know it in your soul, know it in your heart, know it in your direct knowing, most people don't have that experience, right? So my vision for peace really started 25 years ago when I realized that we could awaken and literally awaken people's understanding and direct acceptance of our impermanence and our fragility into a true, oh my God, I really am going to disappear one day. And it really became clear to me that ancient text was correct. None of us actually ever think, especially young people, they just have no clue in their heart and soul wisdom that they're going to pass away and there's no way of controlling it, right? So my vision for peace is that if more of us, I don't want to say all of us, but if a critical mass of the world's population had a direct understanding in their bones and their heart and their soul that they are in fact going to disappear one day, that they are going to die and they have no control. To me, my belief is that then if something would connect to the part that is unconscious, that willfully causes harm to one another or unconsciously causes harm because we're walking around unaware of the preciousness of this fragile gift of life that we've been given. And my belief in my bones, after seeing hundreds of thousands of people affected by the work that I'm most known for, which is called Graceful Passages, a companion for living and dying, which I created with my wonderful creative partners at the time, Michael and Doris Stillwater. What I've seen is when you use the power of music, even film scoring power of music, to awaken emotional experience, and combine it with a direct transmission from someone that understands the impermanence of life, something changes that is irreplaceable and irrefutable and unforgettable, that awakens this, oh my God, this is really not going to go on forever and I have no control over it. And what I've noticed that does is it actually creates this inherent place that Dr. Keltner from the Greater Good Science Center says is that we are born to be good. We were born for philanthropic activity. We were born for philanthropy and kindness. And what happens, I believe, is that our own wholeness with regards to kindness arrives into an intentional and conscious relationship with our egoic self, our identity. And we're more aware of how our impact is having, what our impact is having on the earth, on our loved ones, on our workmates, and on our world at large. And I truly believe that if there was a training required from the earliest age to help people from kindergarten on to understand, oh, Billy stepped on my toy and broke it, and you honor a moment of what I call lost literacy, give them a moment to acknowledge that was here and then, and it's not here now. And we train as we go from the earliest stages on to acknowledge what I call lost literacy, the transition from the recognition that everything doesn't stay here. And it's all, the Buddhist law of impermanence. I truly do believe my vision for peace is that we would have measurable, more palpable peace in the world. So to give you a direct taste of what I'm talking about, it requires we go into a liminal state. Liminal is this place where it's more like an alpha place, right? And in this alpha place, I truly believe that it calls forth this magical integration of heart and soul and spirit and present time. So I'd like to give you a direct experience. It's the first track from the work that I referenced called Graceful Passages, a companion for living and dying. And what I want to ask you to do is when you see this film, if you're more the kind of person that goes deeper into experiences by just listening, then just close your eyes and listen. If you are assisted with images that help you kind of absorb things, then go ahead and look. But my encouragement is to allow yourself to breathe as if you're in a meditation and allow yourself to feel fully resourced with breath and presence. And imagine a moment in your life where someone you love is someone you have to say goodbye to in this life. It'll make it more powerful for you. And as you experience this 6-minute video called Letting Yourself Be Loved featuring Lou Epstein, who was a marvelous man we interviewed. These interviews are all extemporaneous and they're edited and then they're scored like a film. You will understand directly what I mean, because who you are, if you take a check of who you are right now, right before you hear this and see this, and then you see the film and do a check with where you are now with relationship to how precious is life to you. I think you will notice what I mean directly. And there's no better way to describe this than to give you a direct experience. So this is called Letting Yourself Be Loved, from Graceful Passages, a companion for living and dying, featuring Lou Epstein, produced by me with Michael and Doris Stillwater, music by me. I hope you allow yourself to be vulnerable to experience how it moves you.
No one has ever prepared us for this experience. We think it's the end. No. It's another beginning. Another beginning. It's knowing that you loved. Knowing that you loved. It's not easy letting yourself be loved. Of course, we've learned to judge ourselves. And we're always judging ourselves. But I learned to listen, that I was loved. I was loved. And then I would forget that I was loved. Those were the most painful times for me. Forgetting that I was loved. So you've let yourself be loved while you've been here. And you've judged yourself. And you've forgotten that you were loved. And you became alone. But you will always be here. You are blessed. You are forgiven. You are an angel. You have to listen that you're loved. And you have to forgive all the time. Listen that you're loved. And forgive all the time. You are love. Farewell, my son. Farewell, my daughter. Farewell, my father. Farewell, my mother. Farewell, my sister. Farewell, my brother. Thank you for letting me love you. Thank you for letting yourself be loved. God bless you.
So how can we build peace on this planet? It sounds so overwhelming, doesn't it? What should we do? How can we do that together, right? I'm a proud member of a community that I have become very close to called Unity Earth. They post, they create an event called World Unity Week, which happens at the end of June and leads into a 99-day period into the International Day of Peace. And it's very much a support of the work of Avon Madison, who is one of the founders, if not the founder, of Pathways to Peace. And what I've observed in these gatherings and these wisdom keepers and visionaries and performers and healers and artists and people really who are architects of peace is that there's a shared humility for what we're facing here. For me, in order to be fully useful as a collaborative, cooperative partner in a community that is as audacious as believing that we can create peace on the planet, what I've noticed is that the common thread to all the people that are involved in this endeavor is an enormous kindness, an enormous humility, an enormous willingness to be the change they want to see in the world, and a willingness to surrender at every moment to a higher power that understands that there's some kind of divine intelligence that's holding us. Another thing that I noticed that helps me a lot, but I noticed that is a common thread for everyone in this community, is that when I made the shift to believing that life happens for me, not to me, that was a major, what my friend John Raymer calls a major adulting moment when I realized that everything was happening to carve me into the highest expression of who I really am. And what I found is that everyone in this community has a similar feeling about it, is that instead of being partisan and divisive and really fighting to get your position known and trying to really impress people or to really egoically get distinguished, what it is that what I think is the way that peace is built is by that great analogy of the imaginal cells becoming the butterfly. We're all recognizing that we're all cells in a whole, in a one heart, in a one universe, in a one world, in a one universe, one song, in a place where every single human being has a role to play and everyone has a part. And so the only way peace could be generated is from the inside out. And if you can be it, you can become it. And if you become it, you can demonstrate it and embody it. And honestly, that sounds overwhelming, right? But what I've noticed is when you're around the company of other people who live their lives with those values and that sense of being a part of something much greater than our own little identities, a magic starts to take over, where all of a sudden all the effort and the doing and the hard work and the pushing and the egoic structures and the fighting and the positions and the ways to get it done and do it my way, not your way, all of that unbelievably changes. I don't want to say it melts away, but it actually creates the faith that there's something other than what we can control or even explain that's happening here, that is at its core reflective of the peace that is at the center of nature, at the center of Earth's energy, at the center of Mother Earth, at the center of love itself, at the center of heart coherence. And it's why I devoted my life to trying to create musical accelerants, catalysts, awakeners, so that people can have a direct experience of a tool that helps self-regulate you into the one heart experience that actually becomes more of a familiar home that ends up becoming contagious, and you end up becoming an agent of peace because you're experiencing a level of flow and surrender and gratitude that are all the components of being the change you wish to see in the world. So what to do? The context of rolling our sleeves up and collaborating and cooperating and listening. I can't emphasize enough that the listening capacity will bring us peace, will bring us wholeness, will bring us connection. When we truly listen, not just with our minds, but with our hearts and souls and bodies and intuitions as well. The listening reveals to us what to do. And that listening informs a culture that's cooperative and collaborative, not competitive. And it engenders an ability to feel the energy of gratitude and trust that everything is actually unfolding as it should. So these are the components that I ascribe to. And it's one of the reasons I'm such a huge proponent of Pathways to Peace, as well as the World Unity Week and Unity Earth and all of the organizations that have signed on to this 99 Days of Peace experience. And I'm learning how to be the change I want to see in the world by magnetizing energies that are in alignment with these principles. And my hope and prayer is I keep on being refined as a better collaborator, a better communicator, a better agent of love and change and gratitude and connection. And I know it sounds woo-woo and airy-fairy, but it's like the new wow is woo-woo. I don't think I've ever said that before. So the new wow, meaning the new awe, the new revelation, the new awakening to what's magic, is in fact what the culture, the mainstream culture, looks at as too woo-woo, right? Too out there, too spiritual. But I think that the last thing I'll leave in terms of what to do is whatever practices, actions, and engagements we can do that affirm and remind us that we are spiritual beings on a human journey. That's what we do. Remember that. You know, I had the great pleasure to write the music. I used to do a lot of television and film scores, and now I only work on either supporting and underscoring wisdom, spoken wisdom, which you heard a little example of, which is my passion. But I also loved scoring these two movies called Thrive. First one came out in 2011 called What on Earth Will It Take? And what they're referring to is what on earth will it take for everyone on the planet to thrive? And the analogy of that is thriving couldn't happen without peace, right? And the second one that came out was at the end of around fall of 2020, which was called Thrive, This Is What It Takes. And in the This Is What It Takes sequel, which came out in 2020, which I highly recommend as one of the most profound conversation starters and a catalyst for great reflection about this question, what is peace consciousness? Highly recommend you see the movie, whether you agree with everything or not. It's an amazing contribution to the conversations that would help create a uniform experience of peace consciousness. But it's created by Foster and Kimberly Gamble and their amazing team. And I had the great good fortune to write the music and to work very closely with them in creating the music for these films. And I'll never forget that the last cue in the second movie was really hard for me to do. It was the part in the movie where Foster and Kimberly Gamble were saying, we can do this. We can create a world where everyone can thrive. We can create new technologies based on the quantum field that doesn't use carbon fuels. We can use models for cooperation, and no competition. We can do this, right? But it was during the summer of 2020, and if any of you remember the hell that was, there were the elections going on in America. There was COVID, full on lockdown. And there was just this sense that the world was going to hell in a handbasket. And I was having to generate an underscore for this Foster and Kimberly's section saying, we can do this. We've got this, you know. And inside my heart, I just didn't feel like we could do it. I was feeling, I would say, almost a little despair. And then I thought, okay, well, what can I do to create because after all, what is film scoring? The art of creating an emotionally resonant field through the power of intentionally created music that will enable people to actually connect to the intention emotionally of the director in a way that alchemizes with you so that you actually feel a transmission with the content of the film. That's what it is, right? So how could I presume to create a score for you can do this, we can do this, we've got this, when I was feeling despair? And so whatever would come through me was going to be tainted by my despair, even no matter how much I try to paint over the despair. That was my core experience. And everything I do comes direct from my heart and soul. So I thought, you know what? I need to change my frequency. And so I slept an hour longer every day. I became a vegetarian, finally. I took an hour walk every day. I meditated every day. I basically stepped up to my frequency. And over about 10 days, I then tackled the film, this particular challenging score. And I said, I think I got it. And I played the piano version to Foster. And he looked at me and he went, that's it. We can't imagine heaven on earth without vibrating at the frequency of heaven on earth. We can't create, yes, we can do it, love will triumph, and peace will reign and prevail over, and may peace prevail on earth, if we ourselves don't vibrate, because we create at the frequency from which we vibrate. It's a wonderful quote that I learned from my teachers, Allison Rogers and Gerald Rogers, who do the legendary Warriors of Light coaching, is that we create from which the frequency that we vibrate. So I basically upped my frequency and ended up creating a track that when I listen to it, it makes me feel like, yes, we can do this, right? And it was a transmission of wisdom of consciousness through the sculpted vibrational genre of music, sculpted vibrations, holding intention, which is we've known from indigenous times that sounds hold and carry and transmit intention, right? So I ended up using all that cultivation and love and life force and put it in that music. And that would be one of my responses to a very complex question called how do we create wisdom consciousness, other than aligning and affirming all the values I'd already mentioned in this interview. You will have the opportunity to listen to this piece of music. But my invitation to you is to listen and bring to it something that you have felt hopeless or despairing about, or something that you have an enormous will to achieve, or a prayer to have the courage to actually manifest and experience the success of. It could be anything, personal, professional, individual, global, and listen to it with that in mind, and infuse yourself and allow the frequency of this piece of music, this yes, to penetrate every cell in your body. Teresa Collins and I have this phrase, no cell, we used to say no molecule or no cell left behind. This is one of those cues where you want to allow the water in your body to become the crystalline structures that Emoto, the Japanese researcher, discovered around water crystals. When it turned into positive energy, it looked beautiful. And when it was negative energy, it didn't. So this is the kind of cue you want to hear, and imagine you are that water, and refine your frequency to the yes. And you can use it for anything. And I encourage you to listen to it purely for listening, without looking at anything. Close your eyes and just listen. And I hope you understand what I'm talking about after you've experienced it. I immediately think about my daughter, who I adore and respect and honor and love, and I'm so grateful for. When I think about her and her friends and the young people that are aware that they've been given a rather extraordinary challenge, many would say, well, you really dumped it on us, you guys. Thanks a lot, you know. But these young people are not thinking regretful or resentful. They're saying, okay, bring it on. Let's do this. I have hope. I have hope that the generation that's coming in right now is that, you know, it's greater than what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. It's that these challenges is what this generation was made for, the incoming generation. Necessity is the mother of invention, after all, right? But I think they're also what I want to say about the last thoughts around comments for the future is that I used to be obsessed with my value being defined by how the world saw me, how many awards I had, how much money I had in the bank, how many people were in my mailing list, how much praise and attention I got. I was one of those hungry ghosts that never got the presence that I wanted, that any child deserves from a mother and a father. They were loving, dysfunctional Jewish parents that had no idea what was going on the planet, and they had their shadows, and my core wound has been abandonment of having nobody present emotionally, spiritually. And what I noticed was the response to being starving for presence is that it created an ego addicted belief that the only way I'd be happy is if the world saw me, when all along I was looking for my mother and my father to see me, which would never happen, until I realized that the only unconditional love of mother and father I would ever have is inside of me. And that's when things started to get interesting. And so what I'd like to say is, when you adopt the recognition that the only unconditional mother and father you will ever have is inside of you, you start to realize that it's all an inside game. And all the grasping for love, attention, accolades, money, and external things turns out to be sawdust comparatively. And the sooner you can get that, when you can actually care for yourself enough to come into homeostasis and heart coherence and gratitude and empathy, and you naturally start to then feel a yearning to serve humanity, because that's the only game in town, and you can actually get there sooner than the end of life, which is, I'm in the third chapter of my life now. But if you can get there earlier, oof, just gives me the goosebumps just to think about what you guys can accomplish and what could be accomplished. And I just feel like a lot of that drama can actually functionally be simplified, bear with me, but simplified to just a simple equation, which is, what is the being doing balance in your life? And I've made the mistake of being a doaholic, thinking if I do this, I'll get this. And if I do that, I'll do this. And the absolute wisdom truth for awakening and connection and optimal value for the world is when you start to balance the ratio between all that you do and when you are just being in nature, meditating, resting, sleeping, creating, poetry, writing songs, connecting with friends in a more substantial and vulnerable way. All these being behaviors. If only, like most of America, you're only doing that 5% of the time, you're going to end up in a world that's not only not very happy, but it's definitely not going to be peaceful. And that's my word to the wise from whatever wisdom I've garnered, is that the being doing balance is the key leverage point for catalyzing the inner game of creating peace. And that's why listening to music and poetry and all these things that I create are my medicine for me, and I hope for as many people as possible who would listen to the music that I create, to create peaceful environments so that we can actually address this being doing balance in our lives as being a central factor in feeding the addiction to the consumerism and the externalizing and the addictions that this culture is riddled with. Being doing balance is the key.